Man, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation. We did a space on this topic yesterday, and we'll do a follow-up space next week on Tuesday on X because it's a big, big conversation. So thank you for having me on.
No, I always love having you on. And as always, we intend to have another paradigm shifting conversation on a topic which is extremely close to my heart: autistic spectrum disorder. And as you said on your amazing midday Mindset X spaces yesterday, you were discussing the rising rates of autism and how it dilutes the true understanding of autistic spectrum disorder, which leads to misdiagnosis, misdirection of resources, and misunderstandings of complexity of autism. And that is where what we're going to discuss today. So let's start off with how the lines are blurred by misdiagnosis or overdiagnosis. Educate us, Doc.
Well, the thing is, back in the early 80s, I remember hearing about autism. It's when I was starting undergrad school, and there's a huge a stigma of mental health, and there were zero diagnoses that were really cool to have. I mean, no one really walked around waving a flag or getting a T-shirt. Social media didn't exist, so we didn't have headers and PFPs for people advertising their disorders. Those of us in the field would have just seen that to be kind of weird. And then an amazing thing happened. The movie Rain Man came out based on a real life guy by the name of Kim Peek and his father. And Tom Cruise kind of played a father-like figure, but Kim Peek had an actual father, and he would describe he and his father as walking in the same shadow. It's a really, really heart-touching story. But after that movie came out and Kim became popular, people began to see that some really amazing things could be done by those with a certain type of autism, autistic savants. And so that kind of cooked along through the 90s and late 90s and all that. And then we had other diagnoses that came in and out of favor, such as when the movie Sybil came out, everybody wanted to, think or know somebody that had multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity disorder. And so it really was kind of a weird thing for those of us in the field to have these aggrandized diagnoses that seem to be cool. And now on social media, there's a certain set of diagnoses that people think kind of show that they have superpowers. And to your question, the problem with that is that what underlies all those, if they're, if a person really has that, are some very severe deficits, some very severe disabilities, because of course these are diagnoses. These are things that are in the DSM. I've got a whole stack of those over there. The latest one is, I don't know, 500-600 pages, something like that. And so, in particular with autism, there's deficits in social reciprocity, that normal back and forth Johnny that you and I can have so easily. People with true autism, they really aren't able to do that well, or at all. Some are so severely incapacitated they cannot communicate with words at all. It is a complete lack of expressive ability, expressive aphasia. To that point, there's also deficits in nonverbal communication, social interaction. These aren't just odd ducks. These are people that really seem to be completely different from the normal run-of-the-day human. And so it's a severe debility, disability. There's deficits in developing and maintaining, of course, relationships. There's these strange, restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, different interests, strange interest, and stereotypical, repetitive motor movements that make no sense. There's an insistence on sameness, and so people with autism are really, really in a fixed mindset that nothing can change because any change is dangerous. And so in the general population, the numbers of autism run around 1 to 2%. I think that it is actually many times overdiagnosed for the very problem that it's often not clinicians doing the diagnosis. It's
Hmm.
teachers diagnosing people, it's parents diagnosing people. And the biggest problem are people diagnosing themselves through lack of understanding and thinking that it's just a cool diagnosis and it means that they have a superpower. And so I think it's closer probably to 1% of the general population. Of that, about one quarter are women and about three quarters are men. And then that's across the whole range because some people with autism do fall in the range of a normal to low normal IQ. Very, very few. You'd have more chance being struck by lightning twice standing in the same spot than to have actual form of autism, which makes you a genius at some
Hmm.
intellectual pursuits like Kim Peek. But people forget that that's such an incredibly rare thing. But you get on social media, and it's almost, every time you turn around, you're running into somebody that says that they have autism, but you listen to them and they're so very normal in their back and forth.
Hmm.
And here's the problem that people in the general public hear that and they get to thinking that autism is fake, that it's a made
Yeah.
up thing. It's not made up. It is an actual disorder. And my beef with this, my passion for this is I think it is disrespectful to those who actually have a real diagnosis of autism for people using that disability as a marketing technique on social media or other platforms because then voters hear about that and they
Hmm.
see that it's really kind of empty air. It's really kind of, you might call it fakery or something, because then politicians hear about it, and then the purse strings get tightened, and the people with
Yeah.
actual autism do not get the funds or the services that they so very richly deserve.
Yeah, I worked with some extremely complex characters in the past, including kids who have some of the most amazing and unique abilities, some of the most amazing humans I've ever met, but were the extreme end of the spectrum. So were mostly nonverbal and would, of course, express violence on themselves and self-harm as a way to that was a way for them to communicate with themselves or to get over that feeling that they couldn't do the thing that they wanted to do. It's extremely complex. How does that increase of diagnosis affect the allocation of resources, like you mentioned?
Well, I think it muddies the water, and people in the general public. There's already not so much a stigma anymore as much, certainly not like it was in the early '80s of different behavioral health disorders, because we've come to accept that there are people that have schizophrenia. Except for you don't have people running around bragging about and posting on their social media profiles that they have some form of schizophrenia. The problem gets to be, again, when we get overrun with claims of having autism, which really, again, changes the mindset of people when it comes to, hey, we have a kid here that has autism and needs special services. And then teachers get inundated with people requesting special services for kids who have not been assessed. There have been no objective measures done of them. It's simply that a lot of parents, it's almost like a Munchausen by proxy thing,
Mm.
that I'm a more special parent if my child has something called autism, and it's kind of become a cool disorder for kids to have. No parent with a child who actually has autism thinks that autism is a cool thing or
No.
thinks that autism is a superpower. It is an incredibly disabling thing. And so the problem gets to be, again, that we have programs like individualized education programs, and in the states at least, other laws and regulations that get kids special services. And this actually bleeds over into college because parents and kids have come to know how to game the system, that all you have to do to get extra time on a test, to be able to get a makeup test, to be able to be given special considerations, is just claim some type of disability. And a lot of places are taking that at face value because it is so legally risky to challenge somebody when they claim to have a disability. It's almost gotten to be where all you have to do is identify as having a disability, and presto, you have a disability. But that is a grave disservice. It's almost like a stolen valor thing, with people claiming that they were in the military, or claiming that they were in some super secret branch of the military because it's cool, and they really, really weren't. We're having the same stolen valor thing in mental health, with people thinking, I can be the cool kid, I can show that I'm extra special because I have this diagnosis. And I would say, number one, you would not diagnose your own colon cancer. You would not diagnose your own, severe physiological illness, ALS or something like that. You would go to a real diagnostician. And this is the same thing that needs to happen. And so people stop using as a marketing technique that they have some type of autistic savantism, because again, that is so incredibly rare. Mm-hmm. Just think of how much of a chance there is of having that. If maybe 1% of 8 billion have it, what are the chances you're going to run into that 1%? And if you're a female, it's only a quarter of that 1%. If you're a male, it's 3/4. But in that, the percentage that actually has the genius level is incredibly small.
We are running out of time, Dr. Heath, out the whole show. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for everybody listening. You're listening to today's News Talk TNT.